Hey guys, what's up? We're back here with another video, and today I kind of just want to talk about new cars for a change, which is something that I'm normally not into. I really don't pay attention to them, but something was different today. Today I kind of went on the internet. Usually I don't really look at new stuff. I'm usually on like Bring a Trailer or Cars and Bids. I'm looking at older vehicles that are in like pretty good condition because that's sort of my thing. I kind of like older vehicles. They're just simpler. You don't have to think about as much. It's not, you guys know the whole deal. But, lately I've kind of been looking to see what Toyota and Honda have been offering these days. And I'm kind of noticing something kind of weird between the two. Now, if you're a Honda fan like myself, you pretty much know, not to brag, but between Honda and Toyota, Honda is usually the one that's, more hardcore, more extreme. And this kind of goes back in history. Like, we can even talk about the holy grail, of JDM cars, such as the Mark IV Toyota Supra and the Honda NSX. These are holy grail cars, but you can clearly see between the two of them, the Supra, although the Supra definitely has its place in the JDM community, it's definitely a staple. The NSX, although it wasn't as popular as the Supra, again, it's legendary in its own right. But between the two of them, if you put them side by side, you would pretty much say the Honda is the more sporty one out of the two, and that's just how it was. Now, you can do plenty of modifications to these cars. You can do 1,000 horsepower and just mop the floor of an NSX in a straight line, but we're going to be mostly talking about stock for stock in this video. And again, I will probably mention a couple of old cars, but I'm going to try to mainly focus on the new stuff. So, I feel a little bit embarrassed not knowing, the current Honda lineup. As I'm a Honda fan, I feel like that's sort of one thing that I should know off by heart. So, I went to Honda. I went in their, models and stuff. I was kind of looking down, it was pretty typical. You had your Civics, you had your CRVs, your Passport, Prologue, whatever. Like all these SUVs from the 90s are sort of making a comeback, which is pretty, which you would think is okay because we're in an era now where SUVs are, super duper popular. It's probably makes up probably over half the car market right now. If it does, I wouldn't be surprised. Even if it's like a little bit under, I still wouldn't be surprised. But I know definitely for sure it's above 40%. Now, if we go look into Toyota's lineup, it looks pretty typical, but I kind of noticed something between the two of them. Now, like I said before, Honda was always the more sporty one out of the two. And I took a look at this. Toyota, they have the GR Supra, they have the GR Corolla, they have the GR86, and I think I might be missing one. I should know it off by heart, but I believe like I'm missing one. But it seems like Toyota has a little bit more offerings compared to Honda. Honda realistically only has a Civic Type R. I probably should count the SI, but when it comes to dedicated sports cars or sporty cars, yeah, Honda really only has two. They only have the Honda Civic Si, which is on its way out the door because if you guys haven't heard, the 1.5 liter 4-cylinder turbo, dubbed as the L15B, they're cutting that out. They're no longer going to be making the 1.5, although I don't know, because I do believe that is the powertrain in the Honda Accord. It has, I'm not sure if it's turbocharged. I think it is, but it's also a hybrid, so it's also assisted by an electric motor and battery. I'm pretty sure it also makes barely 200 horsepower, which is kind of a downgrade if you ask me, because like although it looks very stylish, the new style has somewhat grown on me. It looks a lot like some Audis, some Hyundais, which is they all kind of look similar to each other. But when Honda released this Accord, and I'm not really into Accords, like it's just not my cup of tea, because the Accord is more of a gentleman's car. It's more of a mature car. It's more relaxed. It's not like super hardcore, even though they did have some hardcore versions like the Euro R and stuff like that. It just wasn't hardcore. For this latest generation, they really dropped the ball. They had the 2 liter Sport. Even though this isn't like supposed to be a fun car, it somehow turned into a fun car. There was tons of modifications you could do to it, and now a lot of people say that car is just like a secret sleeper. Like if you can buy one now. It comes in a 10 speed, and I do believe it comes in a 6-speed manual. And I guess for a daily driver, it ain't that bad. I'll get a 6-speed manual because I'm pretty pretty sure it will be an upgrade over the Civic. But enough of the Honda talk. Let's kind of really get into the meat and potatoes of this video. Now, again, like I said, Honda is the more sporty one, but are they really like in its current state? I don't really think so, because putting drivetrain layouts aside, like front wheel drive, rear wheel drive, it's kind of weird. Toyota actually had 4-wheel drive, they had rear wheel drive, front wheel drive. They had some pretty good offerings. Honda was just strictly, it was either front wheel drive or rear wheel drive. They did have some 4-wheel drive, but those weren't that great. I'm pretty sure, it'll be okay in the wintertime, but it wasn't no Subaru 4-wheel drive, or it wasn't even an Audi 4-wheel drive. It was a completely front bias system, but we're not going to get into that right now. But it seems like Toyota did a complete 180 on Honda, and it's kind of laughing at Honda because they're known for making their engines. They make engines, generators, lawnmowers. They just know how to make a motor. And Toyota, with the GR Corolla and GR Yaris, they came out with this 3-cylinder, and it's kind of like, Honda was known for making very small displacement, high revving. Doesn't even have to be high revving, but small displacement, high performance engines. That sort of was their specialty. And now Toyota came out with this 3-cylinder, although a lot of people have their opinions on it. It's kind of like a ha-ha to Honda, because it's like, we kind of beat you at your own game, because that's what they specialize in. Honda specializes in these very, very small, tiny engines that have really good performance, or, acceptable performance on the street compared to its competitors. Now, I never even saw this coming, but I was just more excited to the fact that, Toyota is bringing, well, not Toyota specifically, but there's just more cool cars available. Like, you could still get a pretty cheap rear-wheel drive vehicle. You can still get a decent 4-wheel drive vehicle. And now that the STI is gone, you have the GR Corolla in its place. And you know what the funny thing is? I've been seeing a lot more GR Corollas, since a lot of people are now sort of taking delivery, and it's summertime now. I don't think people here will drive it in the wintertime because they just want to preserve it, even though it is a car you want to drive in the winter, because it's got 4-wheel drive. It's got a little bit of that rally heritage. Or yes, Corollas were in rally, believe it or not. But yeah, I understand why people would want to preserve their cars for the wintertime, but it's crazy how that is now. I've seen more GR Corollas than I have FL5 Civic Type R's. Heck, I've even seen more Integra Type S's, and I think I've seen mostly white so far. I've seen 1 silver, 1 black, and 2 champagne gold ones. So it's just all backwards. Like, how is an Integra more expensive than a Civic? Shouldn't it be the other way around? I mean, yeah, it should be, but there's that argument. The Civic Type R is a very special car, but you have to remember the core aspect and principle of the car. When the Civic Type R came out, I do believe that was about 18,000. No, it wasn't. I think it was eight. It was either 18 to $22,000. It was a lot cheaper than the Integra, and back then, the Integra Type R was about $25,000. That was, that's how it's supposed to be. But nowadays, the Civic is more expensive than the Integra, which is like really, really weird. Like, I do understand it as a Honda fan, like it's a special car and everything, but I feel like you can only milk that for so long before people are just really fatigued about it. It's just like, yeah, it's a Honda Civic Type R, like it's got its pedigree, it's legendary, whatever. But I'm kind of getting fatigued about that. The whole point of a Honda is supposed to be accessible, cheap, reliable, and economical. That's sort of like the core audience what Honda's into. Obviously you have the performance ones, but it's supposed to be a brand where anyone can get into because it's not like super duper expensive. Same thing with Toyota. But Toyota, they both are kind of the worst offenders when it comes to markups, but it's just crazy how the Civic Type R was supposed to be, the affordable, cheap little, sports compact car that's now turned into the most unaffordable compact, which is weird, but not weird because there's other people who are not even the cars are saying that the average car payment, since my audience is American and Canadian mostly, I know down there in the States for you guys, the average cost for a vehicle is 50 grand, and a used car, they're slow. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like slowly pushing towards 30 grand, which is crazy. But understanding like how the market is, I kind of understand why. But I really do think that Toyota kind of snuck up on Honda, and now they're the more sporty ones out of the bunch. Like, look at the Toyota Supra. Like, people say it's a BMW, whatever, but let's be real. That car is good. It handles really good. It's sharp. It's dynamic. And we usually don't get dedicated cars like that anymore. Usually, it's either a Ford or a sedan, it's a performance version, but we never really get a dedicated car. Now, Toyota and Honda are supposedly coming back with two of their sports coupes. On the Toyota side, they're coming back with the Celica, and Honda, they're coming with the Prelude, but I'm not that optimistic about it. Although the renderings that I've seen look pretty damn cool, I'm just not sure what the powertrain is going to be. The 2 liter now is basically just a naturally aspirated 2 liter that's found in the Civic Touring. I don't think they turbocharged that motor, but it would be nice if they could put the K20 and make it a hybrid. That would actually compete with the Celica perfectly. But I don't even know because that whole powertrain is sort of killed off. I don't think they're gonna do it again, and they kind of I don't know. It's really really hard to say what they're gonna do or what direction they're going into, but for sure, I will definitely say Toyota is definitely killing it. They definitely got, a lot more fun cars, and they're actually coming out with one. I'm not really into SUVs or anything, but they're coming out with a GR line, not like a full GR, but like a GR. I don't want to say themed, but there are some differences between a regular RAV4 and the GR one that's coming out soon. So Toyota, even Toyota is trying to bring out exciting versions of their SUVs and stuff like that. But Honda, they're just kind of staying stagnant with whatever they have right now. And most of the effort that I'm seeing is kind of going towards Acura. But even I think people are kind of getting fed up of that. I've seen some new Acuras. I've seen the new MDX. I've seen the new TLX and stuff like that. But I don't know. It just kind of seems like Honda is kind of asleep and Toyota is just like pumping out these sport, which is wild. You would never think this will happen, but we're kind of living in a time where it is happening. Honda hasn't had a dedicated rear-wheel drive sports car since 2009 when the Honda S2000 went out of production, and in 2005 when the NSX went out of production worldwide. Yeah, Honda really hasn't had a dedicated performance rear-wheel drive car. They've mostly just been cranking out mostly four-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles. I would say the ninth generation, that was kind of what's happening right now. It's a similar thing. The only performance vehicle that you could get at the time, let's say back in 2012, was pretty much a Honda Civic Si. Because again, Honda didn't really have any sports car offerings, and it was so weird. How Honda, they didn't have to have a dedicated sports car, but they didn't have any other front wheel drive sporty cars other than the Civic Si. Now, moving on to the 10th generation, the Type R, I felt like kind of made this a little bit worse. Not because the Type R came out. Obviously, the Type R is a great car. I'm really glad we actually got a Civic Type R for once in our lives. What I'm more upset about is that the SI was kind of like overshadowed in the process. and it kind of breaks the Honda tradition a little bit. Usually, all Honda performance compact cars usually share the same base engine. Like, for example, when the first generation Civic Type R came out, the EK9, it had the B16B, and let's say the lower tier SAR just had a regular old B16A. Same block, but obviously the internals are very different. This would be the same for the EP3 Type R and the SAR. Basically, two different engines. You have the K20A3 and the SAR, and then you have the good old K20A for the Type R. And obviously, same thing, different internals and different transmissions. And with the Type R, you get a mechanical limit slip LSD included in the transmission. And this would be the same case pretty much, but this is where things started to get a little bit different. Now, you would think the SI, in a perfect world, SI would have the 2 liter, from the Honda Accord, but fortunately that didn't happen. They opted for the L15. It kind of sounds like this whole channel, I'm just like shitting on the L15, but usually Honda, their performance compacts usually share the same base engine. So I think that was the point where I kind of saw the direction Honda was going in. And then, Toyota came out with a Supra. Toyota came out with all these like pretty awesome cars. And Honda was just like, yeah, we have the Civic Type R that no one can afford. So it's just really weird. I feel like Honda could be doing a little bit better in that regard, but we'll see what's going on. But to answer the question, I think, yeah, Toyota did do a complete 180 on Honda and kind of beat them at their own game. Yeah, that was just sort of my thoughts, guys. We'll see you in the next one. All right, peace out.